Hello everyone and welcome to Prosperity Squad. Here's another video. This time I'll be talking about your first home, tips, traps, and the benefits of buying. So let's get right into it, and so I can try and keep this one short for you today. So the first thing I'd like to talk to you about is why buy at all. Um, Lots of people ask, like, you're so young, what's the point in buying a property? And realistically, for me, it made a lot of sense. Um, Real property, especially your first property, is very tax efficient and subsidized. So these are the biggest two things that were important for me. Your principal residence in Australia is tax exempt from capital gains, which means that no matter how much that asset goes up in value, you're not going to be paying tax on sale for selling it. Now that's a huge benefit. Everything else, including shares, fixed interest securities, if they go up in value, you're paying for it on the way out, especially if that's gone up a lot. With real estate, your principal home, your asset could go from 20,000 to 200,000, as many of our parents figured out during the 70s and 80s, um, and you still won't be paying any additional capital gains tax on that. So that's a really amazing benefit there. There's also $10,000 currently on offer for all first home buyers. It's a first homes grant. First home buyers grant, that one is only on the table as long as the government allow it to stay there. So that's something that you may not get unless you buy while it's still around. And it used to be 15,000, so it's been reducing. Since I think it was June 2017, they changed it to only 10,000. Uh, there's also another incentive called the first home buyer's rate of duty, which means that stamp duty is also significantly reduced for first home buyers. My stamp duty went down from 11,000 to only $4,000. So on top of the 10, that makes about 16K, 17,000 dollars of total benefits that I got given by the government as a result of their incentives. So it's very powerful, those tax incentives and subsidizations. The second thing that was very important for me was borrowing power. The fact that I bought a house and, well, hopefully will be consistently meeting repayments for a very long period of time will build up my credit rating, which in the future can then be used to purchase a business, other significant investment, which can be very important. If that's your goal and if that's your dream to own your own business more than own a house, it can be worth it to move into the property market first, because that way you can build your credit rating based on a very common asset, which is a house, and you don't need to have as much finesse at the time of getting the business loan if you've already demonstrated that you have the ability to pay off those loans if and when you need to. Um, Tangibility. So the thing about property is it's tangible, unlike any other asset. You can feel it, you can touch it, you can go stay in it, you can leave your things there for 30 years. So property is one of those things that's got that value, that inherent value. You can go there, you can live there, you can feel it, touch it, taste it. And when you have something like that to look forward to, sticking to a savings goal is much simpler. I know that my savings strategy was non-existent and falling apart without a clear and specific, strict objective. I need this amount of money by this time. And if I didn't get there, like the thing that I really wanted and having that tangible asset wouldn't be possible. The fourth thing I'd say is that timing. Right now is a good time to buy, in my opinion. Perth's property market has been weak and become cheaper since the end of the last mining construction boom. 2011, 2012, commodity prices were at an all-time high. Mines were opening up all over the state. People were flying in from over east to get jobs here. Nuts, things were going crazy. After that, the world was flooded with commodities from WA. The mining construction boom slowed down. Mines that were starting ended up having to be cancelled. Mines that were in operation had to go into cost saving mode because the commodity prices weren't really there for those smaller miners to operate. And the construction mining boom started to run down from then, from the 2011 2012 to about now. Property prices have stagnated and even come down in many areas. However, there are signs that the cycle is coming to an end, coming to restart, which means that the construction boom will pick back up again. Many new mines have been approved in WA just in the last few months, and Perth's population growth is still high by international standards and expected to actually continue growing faster in future years. So definitely a good time to buy property if you ask me. Um, Next, I think we're going on to tips. Yeah. So as I said, I've just put a down payment onto my first home, which is an apartment in Mount Pleasant. And I learned that if I didn't have a deposit of over 20% to purchase my property, I'd be forced to pay what's called mortgage lender's insurance. Now, mortgage lender's insurance is a additional cost that will be added onto your mortgage if you don't have a deposit of 20% or more. Now it scales up from people who only have 5% down to 15% down. And on a kind of property that we'd be looking at, if you only have a 10% deposit, you'd be looking at nearly $7,000 additional cost if you didn't have that 20% down on a $400,000 property, which is a lot of money. Um, so definitely something to be wary of. If you can avoid it, avoid it. Get that 20% down. If you can't commit to a 20% deposit, you probably can't commit to a mortgage. So be sure that you get that if you can, if you possibly can. Avoid those nothing down up front bullshit loans because that's definitely a trap. The first home super saver scheme. So I recommend that anyone who's looking to buy a home near medium term, even long term future, if you've got some surplus cash, is that the first is that you sacrifice up to $15,000 of pre-tax income per financial year to super. So this is a very efficient way of sacrifice of savings because for every $1,000 that you invest, you're only paying, and it comes out of your pre-tax income. You're only paying 15% tax on that. Where usually, if you were earning above 37, above $70,000, you'd be paying around the 37% tax bracket, which is high. Uh, Effectively, those people in that position will only lose 600 for every $1,000 will only lose $610 of income. So it can be a very effective way to save, but you have to make sure that you're not breaching your caps. And there's very specific circumstances where I wouldn't recommend that you do this. Um, People with very strict cash flow problems, you'll lose money in hand. There's and if you're close to your super cap, which is $25,000 for a financial year, if you go and do 15,000, you'll push yourself into a bad place where you're sacrificing a bit too much. So definitely get some personal advice before you settle down that course of action. Another thing I didn't know is buying off the plan only requires a 5 to 10% down payment to the developer to secure your unit, but you will still need that 20% at the time of settlement. So don't just get lured in thinking, oh, this person's going to accept my bid with just a 5% down payment. Doesn't mean that you will be able to avoid that mortgage lenders with less than 20. So that's definitely something to remember. One more thing I'd like to mention, it's not on here, but if you are going to buy a property that's very far away from where you work, you have to consider that the total cost of picking that property and living in that area is higher than what you think. You have to pay for the commute. You have to pay for the time that it takes you to get from where you work to where you live. So definitely something to keep in mind when you're purchasing a property. Don't just get lured in by the cheapest price. Like you have to think that you're paying for what you get, and there's a lot of things that go into making up value. Value for you could be completely different to value for someone else. Moving on. So checking and improving your credit score. So I did do a post about this earlier in the day, but if you go to www.creditsavvy.com.au, you can get your credit file and to see how many credit applications you've made, how on time you've been with your past credit, past loans and things like that, and you will be able to see where you fit in the national average. So the average is about 650 in Australia, but a good credit rating will be above 700. So you can do things to improve your credit score by getting approved for new loans, new credit cards. I wouldn't recommend continuously applying for credit cards because every rejection is it's really bad. Um, But if you do have a credit card and and you have had a car loan in the past and you've been very good with it, you've been consistently paying it off, then your credit score will improve. And there's Paul Tsagopoulos in the group. If anyone wants to give him a shout out, he's very good with this kind of stuff. He's a mortgage broker with a lot of experience, and he will definitely be able to give you some tips and tricks on improving your credit score. So that's pretty much it. We're nearly at the end. I just need to get to my last slide. So, in conclusion, please reach out. Anyone who's looking for advice. Please post additional questions to the page. I'm happy to talk about this all day. Very far into it, and I've done a lot of comparison for developments in Perth, and can send you that spreadsheet if you're interested. I've also done a lot of work putting together my own accumulation plans and very experienced with that. So please, thanks for watching, but please add your friends and family if you think that they would appreciate this content. I'd really appreciate it. I'd love to grow this group as much as I can. And yeah, let's get some discussion going, and I really hope that you enjoyed it. So thank you, everyone, and I'll see you next week.